Hi everyone, we're going to get started in a few seconds. So if you could please just introduce yourself and where you're from in the chat box before we begin, that'll be great. Welcome everyone. Looks like we're getting quite a few people from around the world. Berlin, that's pretty crazy. Don't know what time it is over there. But if you just joined us, please pop your name and where you're from in the chat box and we'll kick off in a few seconds. Great, let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Jessie from General Assembly. Welcome to today's webinar, Implementing Travel Tech for Recovery, presented in partnership with Rezdy. Thanks for joining us, and a big thank you to our partner Rezdy for helping us collaborate on this event. Firstly, to introduce General Assembly, we're a global tech education company that helps people upskill in business, data, design, and of course technology. And our mission is to empower people to pursue the work they love. You can visit us on our website at ga.co to check out our other classes and workshops, as well as our free events like this one. Before we begin, there's just a few ways to get involved today. So as you can see at the bottom of your screen, there's the Q&A and the chat box. So Q&A, please put any questions that you have about the content and discussion with our presenters in that box, and any comments that you have about the discussion, just pop that in the chat box so everyone else can see that. Cool, so thanks for joining us, and we really appreciate any feedback that you have at the end of the session. So please head to ga.co/APAC online to share any feedback that you have. Now I'd like to pass it on to our moderator for tonight, which is Jen. Jen is the co-founder of YouLive to Travel. So I'll pass it over to you, Jen. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be here. Can everybody hear me okay in the mic? All right, so I'm Jennifer Fine. I'm your moderator for this evening, so I'm looking forward to having a really interesting discussion. I'm the co-founder of YouLive to Travel, and we create software for travel businesses to make group travel easy for both the organizer and their travelers all in one place. So my last trip was to Patagonia in March, and I just made it out of Chile before they closed the borders. So I'm very lucky, and I know I'm very lucky. And so that's my travel story. Now we're going to go through and introduce each of our panelists and have them introduce themselves and also tell us what their last trip was. So I think we're going to start with each of the different perspectives. So we're very lucky to have the OTA perspective from Shireen at GetYourGuide, the reservation system perspective from Kevin of Rezdy, and the operator perspective from Will of Grays and Grays. So we're going to start with Shireen.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, so thank you, Rezdy and General Assembly for having us on this panel. Very grateful to be here. So my name is Shireen Goodrick, for those that don't know me. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I've worked with GetYourGuide for almost 1.5 years now, and before that I worked in the industry, both from an airline perspective and government. In terms of my last trip, domestically it was to Adelaide as part of a Tourism Australia conference there. And just before that I came back from Malaysia, where I visited some friends and family.
Excellent, thank you. And now Kevin from Rezdy.
G'day, hello everyone. Thank you, General Assembly, for putting on such a lovely show for us all. And also thank you all for inviting us into your home for the next hour or so in this very unique and yet strange time. So my name is Kevin Liu, and I'm the General Manager for Partnership for Rezdy, which is a software as a service that lets our customers to live their dream so that we can take care of the mundane and the tedious chore out of their day-to-day. For the last trip, well, do you know what? The last trip was to Berlin back in February. Before they actually went in lockdown, and I had a very, very lovely tour to our GetYourGuide office, and also met with a lot of people in Berlin for a conference that didn't happen. And so yeah, so now back in Sydney, and like everyone, cooped up for the last 7 weeks. Anyway, so that's me.
Thank you. Welcome, Kevin. And finally, we have Will from, is it Grays and Grace or Grace and Grays?
Grays and Gays.
Ah, there we go.
Well, good. So yeah, I'm Will Andrew. I'm originally from the sunny UK, but now based in Sydney, Australia. I'm the founder and operator of Grays and Gays, which is a luxury picnic experience in Sydney. I'm also the business operations and transformation manager at Rezdy, the same company as Kevin. My job essentially is to make sure the right teams in Rezdy have the right tools and technologies so they're able to do their jobs most efficiently. My last trip was to New Zealand back in February. Amazing place, first time I've ever been. If no one's ever been, definitely go.
Yeah, I definitely second that. My favorite trip to New Zealand was walking the Milford to Milford Sound. And I got to the end of it and it was supposed to be raining because it's supposed to rain 99% of the time. We had this gorgeous sunny day. So it was one of those kind of lucky on one hand, but we didn't get to see any waterfalls. So an excuse to go back. So yeah, thank you guys all for being here tonight. We're really here to just have a conversation and get the perspectives from each of you. We have a few questions that we've prepared, but of course, we are looking for you to put your questions into the Q&A, and so please feel free to do that. I already see some popping in, which is great. So to get us started, I just wanted to sort of share what I've been noticing in terms of the conversation I'm having with our clients, so that there's kind of two approaches to how the travel industry is responding, and that's either they're hibernating and preparing for the travel rebound, or they're reworking their products to provide a virtual or online experience in the meantime. So I'm going to go through each of our panelists and find out what they think are the sort of pros and cons of each of those approaches. So we'll start with Shireen.
Yeah, so I suppose from our perspective, certainly with the rest of the industry a few weeks ago, things kind of went off a cliff. And at that time, when we were I was actually at that conference in Adelaide with Tourism Australia. The initial, I suppose, reaction from the industry was to go into hibernation, as you say, and obviously deal with the immediate impact. For both of us, GetYourGuide and our operators, that meant helping our customers to have some certainty in a very uncertain time. So initially that did mean refunding our customers or otherwise offering them a voucher to rebook when they could travel again. And I just want to take this time to thank all of our supply partners for being so open and sharing that cost where they could, but of course we understand where it couldn't happen. We took that opportunity to bear that cost, knowing that the customers will be back again, and we want them traveling and booking with us and with our operators again when they do come back. In terms of the since that time, in the last few weeks especially, what hibernation now means is I guess looking to the future and starting to talk more about future and what we can do together to get ready for the recovery. Because what has become more clearer and a little bit more certain in the last few weeks, especially in Australia and New Zealand, is that recovery will come soon, at least for some markets and specifically domestic. And so we're working together on this and talking about this more, which is really great. In terms of virtual experiences, this has been really great to see in terms of the creativity and in that same kind of story of talking about future and what's come from industry here. From GetYourGuide, we are certainly supporting this and leveraging this with a view to engaging our customers whilst they're at home. We can see our customers, whilst they are, still starting to think more about travel at this point in time, it is still dealing with the reality of working from home, being in isolation. And so we're working with our partners to give them really engaging content so that we do remain top of mind. And when they can travel again, they know where to book and where they're going to go and who with. So thanks.
Absolutely. And Kevin, what is your perspective from the reservation side of things in terms of the two approaches?
Yeah, no, good point. And I think Shireen has definitely hit some good points there as well. So, from a reservation perspective, is that we're sort of the entity that sits in between, because we connect the reseller to the suppliers and vice versa. And so during the shutdown across the world, we're seeing quite a few businesses has pretty much gone and received tons of cancellation. And bookings just you don't see them at all. And so that's why you see a lot of businesses have gone into hibernation, which is quite normal in times like this, because nobody know what that's what that the future looks like at the moment in many parts of the world. And fortunately for us here in Australia and in New Zealand, we have sort of flattened the curve a lot better versus some of the other countries. And then since the shutdown and also the worsening of the case, there has been a lot of articles that has come out, and some of the stuff that I've been reading is that during the shutdown, there's a lot of business that probably would do well during hibernation would probably be the smaller to medium businesses where they are pretty asset light, or don't have much negative gearing. And so what that means is that they can just simply shut their door, if they're a photography class or a walk into a school, a walk into an operator, and versus the large operators or the large agency, where they have a bit more deep pocket, a bit more fun for them to be able to last, or enough fat to last through, the hibernation. And I think that's a really good sign to see, because that in our space, and especially for Rezdy, we have quite a few of these SMBs or small to medium businesses that can afford to go into a short-term period of not having business, because they don't have such asset heavy. But on the other side is that you do have operations out there who do have a lot of assets, a lot of fixed assets and overheads, where they have to manage as well. And we also have a good share of these kind of clients as well. And I think that that's probably a bigger risk in terms of from an operation and reseller perspective, but more so from an operator perspective. So that's the only thing I think from a hibernation. But then what's interesting is that we are also seeing data that we're still getting bookings. In the last couple of weeks, we're actually getting net positive in terms of bookings. We're actually getting more bookings than cancellation. So if that's anything, that's really positive to see. And you probably ask, what are the sort of categories that's getting the bookings? And our data insight team has been hard at work in getting these kind of information. And we're seeing things like facility rentals, like jet skiing company, who is very good at renting these jet skis, and also be able to have a bit of social distancing. Food and beverage, not that you will go in and sit down and do a cooking class, but a lot of people have pivoted towards the virtual cooking classes, where people send the raw ingredient out to you and then book a time and do a cooking class. Racetrack, as well as escape room, which seems to be the fast growing space in outdoors and activity space. You wouldn't be having a large group in a escape room, because otherwise this wouldn't be an escape room, would it? And then you got destination driven suppliers. So, Sanctuary, where they can, turn into adoption of animals, which I think was quite fascinating. Sorry, probably taking more time, but and a lot of time I think from an operator perspective is that sure they can go into hibernation, but always you got to think about how you're going to come back. Don't just do anything during that period. Sorry, not do anything during that period. And then one other thing I think that Shireen mentioned was virtual experience, and I think that this is pretty much on the mouth of everyone. One of the favorite quote that I read in the last couple of days was by a guy called Peter Sim, who runs a tour in the UK. And so one of the quote he mentioned was that a disaster like this breeds innovation, and I think this is absolutely the case where virtual tourism or virtual experiences is something that we're seeing popping up left, right, and center. But we've never had this before, and this is I truly believe that the in-destination experience or the experience of going to a place cannot be replaced, not by any means. So I think that this is more just a marketing or a way for us to be able to keep people in front of the people, in front of their mind, but at the same time to allow them to be able to experience what life will be, or what life was, so that travel will be able to come back. So it's more of a branding exercise. But what I always say, any of the conversation around virtual experiences is that I just simply don't think, we have the infrastructures right now to make it really immersive. So, but I think that, we're slowly getting there as well. But anyway, so that's just some of my thoughts.
Absolutely. And I think, like you were saying, I think those who are sort of striving to create those virtual experiences are going to find that content can actually be really useful to kind of create these sort of teasers to get people to come in real life as well. So it may not be a wasted effort. You may be able to continue to reuse that content as part of the recovery campaigns. There's actually a great question here. Is there evidence that doing virtual experiences will lead to future bookings? I'm going to guess that the data is not in on that yet, but it's a great question, and I'm sure you guys will be analyzing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the thing about these kind of virtual experiences is that, it's all about putting your product and your business at the forefront of the consumer. Because let me tell you, during this time, the only thing you can do is just surf the website and look at where the next experience will be. And so, if you look at the internet and the evolution has gone through from, just static pictures to descriptions to videos to as well as, sharing social media. And I think absolutely through this, virtual experience will accelerate, the overall industry for us. So, as much as this, is an impact, I think that a lot of creativity is going to come out of it, which will puts us in a very unique place. Absolutely.
Well, I know we actually just created an Africa parody just out of sheer boredom. So, it's the things that get made during this time. I missed the planes down to Africa. So we'll jump on to Will and get the operator perspective. And actually, it'll be great to hear from you because you're kind of in that food and beverage perspective. And we have a question here. Do you think that virtual experiences will continue to be an auxiliary product for food and beverage in particular to complement their main business?
Yeah, so to answer that question, I think it will be. I think it's something we can trial. We've got nothing really to lose to set up these virtual experiences. I think it's still worth offering virtual experiences once we turn back to the norm. It's pretty easy to turn things off, right? But in terms of hibernation, virtual activity, virtual experiences, it really depends on your business. For my business, I don't need it to survive. It's an addition to what I've already working on with Rezdy. So for me, it's kind of keep things hibernate, keep things to a minimum, work on things in the background. What website changes? What can I develop? What OTAs can I get connected with? And then for those businesses that do need to survive, they do need to get some money coming through to make sure they're up and running by the time things recover. We have to adapt, we have to survive, we have to look what's out there. Wine tours, for example, instead of go into a vineyard, bring the wine to the customer, send a few wines to customers, do virtual wine tours. The same for honey. I saw a company that sells honey. Let's do a virtual tour amongst the bees. Let's get in the bee suit. Let's go amongst the bees. Let's do that as part of the experience, and let's send them some honey in the post, in the mail, and then we can taste that after. From working at Rezdy in the last few weeks, I've probably spoken to 150 different suppliers. Everyone's different. It really just depends on, do you need to survive, or can you keep things to a minimum, get ticking along, and then when things pick back up, open up, or do you need some money coming through the door, really?
Yeah. And so, and it's whether or not you have the resources to put into creating these online experiences when they may not be worth any money right now. So it might be better to just hibernate, save your cash, and get ready for the recovery. So yeah, let's jump into that and talk about kind of focusing on the recovery. I mean, just before this call, I saw that Australia has announced a tourism restart task force has been formed. So that's quite exciting. I think, we have turned a corner and we're starting to actually think about what it's going to be like when we can step outside our doors. So from each of you, just really quickly, are you optimistic right now in terms of our current state of the tourism industry? And what are your thoughts in terms of the first kinds of tourism activities that will be the first to rebound? Shireen?
Yeah. So in terms of the current state of the industry, one thing I've observed is that it changes day by day. As you just mentioned, there's a new task force mentioned. But speaking again, more so for Australia and New Zealand, the positive rhetoric is starting to accelerate. And we've certainly seen a big difference even between this week and last week. New Zealand relaxed the isolation measures. It's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction. And again, we're seeing that in Australia as well. And so what is underpinning, I think, all of this change, though, within our industry in particular, is the resilience that we have in our community. And I certainly think we have great leadership in terms of the bodies that do support and guide us here, being the national tourism bodies, the state and regional tourism bodies, industry bodies like APAC, TIA. We are probably the most impacted industry, or arguably, during COVID, yet I think we're probably the one that has been, again, from a biased perspective, perhaps the most proactive and forward-looking. So I think that's a really great thing and a great reflection of the strength of our industry. And so if we could apply that bit by bit, step by step, I think long-term we will see a bounce back as quick as the demand does open up. We can match that on the supply side. So the conversation now this week is certainly, as I mentioned before, taking steps towards recovery. In terms of the second part of your question around what do we expect to rebound first? Look, at this stage, it's great to hear, Rezdy, in terms of the bookings you're seeing, more bookings than cancellations. I think safely we could say that too. But in terms of real bookings, we don't have sufficient data yet to be able to say, it's this or that. But from what we do know is which profile of customer will bounce back first, and then also an indication of when. And speaking for Australia, for example, it'll happen at a micro level first. So at city level, and then expand to our regions within our states, intrastate, followed by interstate. And this is talking about now the latter half of 2020. And again, positive news story this week was a lot of talk about the ANZ or Trans-Tasman bubble. So hopefully all of the efforts that we're putting in now to self-isolate will mean that we can open up our borders between our two countries sooner rather than later. And the fact that we see this data as GetYourGuide, but then to hear that kind of also coming from other players in our industry and from government, it means that we are all looking at the same trends, which does kind of reinforce that certainty. Last week, there was a webinar by TA and Deloitte where they shared some statistics, which was, I think, probably quite a light bulb moment for many. And again, really positive in that of the tourism spend we see in Australia so far, 80% of that actually does come from domestic. And so if that's the market that's going to open up first, what a great opportunity for us to, first of all, have a strong base to build off, and then to mitigate the gap in the short term that would have been filled by international. People that would have gone overseas now, you know, they still want to take their trip. Tourism is probably the last thing that I want to give up, you know, when I'm thinking about what I can save money on. And so, like, let's all jump on the same bandwagon and encourage everyone to travel and explore their own backyard.
Awesome. Yeah, so Kevin, I'm actually going to toss you one of the questions here to be more specific with your answer in terms of what operators do you see as, you know, potentially recovering the best? Like, what specifically are they doing? Is it something they're doing? Is it just the nature of the space that they're in that makes them more likely to recover quickly?
No, so sorry, first of all, I think some of you are saying that my audio is playing up a bit. So if it does get worse, please let me know. I'll dial in using the old handphone. So yeah, so in terms of what type of customers will recover, I think first and foremost is that, you know, for any customers who's sort of sitting out there thinking, you know, my business is probably going to be one of the first to rebound. I will say that the very first thing is that, you know, don't just think that, you know, you shouldn't be spending any money on the marketing piece as well as getting in front of the clients, because right now you can be sure that your clients are online searching for experience, because I'm one of them. You know, I'm planning for a trip hopefully to Early Beach in October, November this year. And I'm looking for experiences that I wanted to do, and also looking for operators who's conscious about, you know, this COVID situation and what they're doing to sort of make me feel a lot more safer, and also for me and my family, so that, you know, that they are going to be able to, you know, also feel safe as well. You know, as what we're seeing from a reservation system perspective is that, you know, it's always positive to see that there is operators out there who is actually doing okay and doing well, because they're quite innovative, and they're also, you know, following the change of time. And so, you know, one of the things I was mentioning is that the escape room, as well as renting, you know, the jet skiers in the US. And so, so from you know, from some of the experience or some of the things that we've been hearing is that, you know, it's all around you know, the social distancing, you know, the number of people on each session, how much can you control the crowd? And I think this is down to, you know, can you take reservation at a certain time in order to keep the people, you know, separated. Another good example that I heard from one of our operators was that, you know, they do an indoor skydive. And what they do is that instead of having the tunnel open to everyone at a same session, and what they do now is that they go, we'll open that session to a family or to a person. So you buy for an hour, and you can have X amount of your family members or the same household to attend in the same session. And so that after the session is done, I'll have about 15 minutes to be able to clean and do the general hygienes to take on the next group. And I think that, you know, as we head in towards the new normal, whatever that might be, I think that, you know, we need to start to think about these kind of things. You know, take example in Singapore, is that, you know, they're introducing this new 7-point cleaning system, which I heard from some of the folks that I was talking about in the webinar previously. And, you know, Marriott today just came out, or earlier this week came out to say that they're also going to introduce a cleaning service or standard that will make the guests feel a lot more safer. But then again, you know, the normal seasonality, as well as the the positioning of the product will still be applicable. And I think that, when it comes to pricing, people will be very conscious about it post-corona. And there's two camps of thoughts in that. The first thing is that, shall we set the price low just so because, we wanted to be able to, win the customers back by using bargains, by using, cheaper deals. But on the other hand, with all the social distancing, you're reducing the number of capacity, and also all the cleaning, as well as all the processes you need to put in. These additional capitals you need to think about from an operator perspective. So, if your prices are too cheap versus somebody who's calling out these things that they're actually charging on top for, it'll probably make me want to spend a little bit more money with somebody who's actually thinking about these sort of things, which I wouldn't mind paying a bit more for. So I hope that sort of answered the question in a roundabout way, but if not, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. All right, so Will, if you want to give your perspective as an operator in terms of what kinds of tours and activities are going to be the first to rebound.
Yeah, sure. I think it will be, to be honest, those private kind of smaller group tours, the one-on-ones, the small groups. For the tours, which are for larger groups, maybe buses of people, it's just about trying to make and adapt those into private group tours. So I've spoken to companies who offer wine tours or boat tours or city tours. Instead of offering it to large groups, get them into private groups, 1 or 2. The price is going to be a lot higher, but the service and the quality of the tour will also be higher. Things I've been doing or started doing before we closed down was providing things like hand sanitizer with all the picnics, just trying to provide those extra hygiene options to customers. For other suppliers who rely on more international travel, for example, a stargazing product, that anyone can see these stars in the local area. How about going and renting that professional equipment you have to the locals in the community who can see more with your specialized equipment? So I think domestic will definitely come back quicker. I think flights, we're not sure when they're going to return internationally. So just trying to adapt your products to work more with a domestic market, and also offering a product for smaller private groups.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is like you got to be creative, and you really got to think about who's going to be able to reach you. And if you're in the position where you can rent it to individuals, great, and focusing on that smaller experience. Obviously, the bigger the audience, the slower it's going to be coming back. So we just being conscious of time, lots of great questions coming in here. And actually, one question coming in that relates to our next question. So thinking about, operators working with more resellers and distributors, and there's a specific question for GetYourGuide around planning to offer, given the changing travel landscape, is GetYourGuide planning to offer a wider number of in-destination services? So can I toss that one to you, Shireen?
It's a question of what is meant by in-destination services. Before I can answer that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, if anonymous attendee would like to clarify their question, but then if you'd like to just address the general question of, how can operators work with more resellers?
I think the first point, and maybe the main takeaway, is if you're not online already, be online. And purely because in a post-COVID world, the habits that society has developed in transacting online, searching for things online, means if you're not there after this, you might be behind the game. You might be behind others when demand comes back. So do this. In our industry as well, we are very blessed to have many people like ourselves, GetYourGuide and Rezdy, that are vying to help operators promote to various customer bases. So that means being an operator, you have a lot of opportunity and at this time as well to really deep dive, do your research and find out what works best for you. And of course, this is very much based on the assumption that when demand does return, you want to get as many bookings as quickly as possible. So from a Get Your Guide perspective, the beauty of how we work is we have many channels that we use to connect our operators' incredible experiences with customers that are looking for them. We have our platform, of which we have 10 million customer base that love our brand and look always to book through Get Your Guide. Also, more traditional digital channels being search and SEO, but we also have our own reseller network, which we don't often boast too much about. We should do more, but that's working with many different companies, both in travel and not, in media, also other agents in other markets. We show you to customers of these partners, and at the end of the day, we do all the hard work to invest for you, and you only pay for any customers that actually walk through your door. So this is the beauty of being online and working with Get Your Guide. And but if there's anything you take away, just look into being online if you're not there yet.
Very good advice. So Kevin, actually, just being conscious of time, I might actually just kind of jump around in terms of some questions. And so the thing that we wanted to talk about is, as an operator, what should they be doing during this quiet period? But in particular, there's a question here in terms of whether or not Rezdy has rolled out any new functionality that speaks specifically to this time that operators should maybe be looking to take advantage of.
Yeah, no, absolutely, a very good question. That for Rezdy, because we're cloud-based software as a service, we're very nimble at introducing new features and benefits to support our operators and also our resellers, to help them, at any time. And so, for us, is that we're releasing new features every week, whether it be, very, very good features to help them to, reach out to more resellers, to help them to save time in doing their work, and also, to help their business to, through this tough time. And, our guys at, the engineering product guys are doing a tremendous amount of work in terms of getting the, one of the features that was rolled out, it only took them a couple of days of doing it, which was a function to turn credits into gift cards or coupons. So this gives the operator a lot of flexibility to be able to hold on to some of the cash that the business would desperately need, in order for them to be able to keep that. But also, from a Rezdy perspective, our marketing team is doing an incredible job at helping the operators through the tough time like this by getting different informations from industry and key industry folks, and also governments as well, and writing up some very, very good information to keep our operators ahead of the game, and also making sure that they're also keeping ahead of what they should be doing. Because from a software as a service company, we have a lot of features from day one, because a lot of people will set up their product on the first day, but then forgetting that there is so many other stuff that they could do. And during the busy time, what they always do is that, let's just get the product on, and I want to connect to one of their OTAs, and I'll be done with it, and probably not going to touch the system again, because they're just happy with the status quo. And I think right now is the absolute time for people to be able to sort of reassess and start to, look at some of the configurations, some of the setup that they have, in order for them to be, to be more, I guess, have their business more fluid, more lean, if you will, because that, during this time, not much business will get through this without having to lose a staff or two. So I think that having the ability to sort of really lean into your software, or looking at automating your workflow using a company like Rezdy, so that you will be able to sort of cut back in terms of the expense. So I think that these are some of the points I think will be, ringing home, for us, especially, from a Rezdy perspective, because we're all about the suppliers. And that's why, for us to be able to sort of continue to do the day-to-day, upgrades or introducing new features, this is what we're thinking about as well. How to keep our customers ahead of the game while the business is going through such a tough time, and also, how to help them, to lean up to speed up their business for that recovery when it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely find with software as a service, obviously ours is that as well. And you guys have been around a lot longer, so I'm sure you've got it on a whole nother scale in terms of you have so many features that probably 90% of your customers aren't taking advantage of everything that they could. And so being able to actually take this time to learn how to use it and leverage that is, that's the advice we're definitely giving all of our clients as well. So Will, what's your perspective in terms of the best thing for people to do during the quiet period?
Yeah, so from a technology aspect, I would agree, get online, get a central reservation system like Rezdy, and then get that connected up to all the different OTAs you're working in, so you have a central reservation system. Another thing is learning and understanding your technology. Learn how your website works, how it operates, what's running in the background. Learn about SEO and how to get your website higher up on Google rankings. Understand your social media, maybe set up your social media pages, maybe create a YouTube channel. How often do you post on Instagram and Facebook? I believe you should be posting a minimum of once a day, of a mixture of pictures and videos. Essentially learning all this different technology and what's running in the background to operate your business requires a lot of time and money. So learning some of these skills will save you money and kind of take that need of third-party contractors and developers. Other things I'm doing during this quiet period is a lot of brainstorming, thinking about what's it going to be like on the other side, trying to work on different partnerships and working with other businesses. Grays & Gaze recently partnered with Sydney Bridge Climb, so you can complete a bridge, afterwards you come and do a picnic. It's kind of working with others in the industry to offer alternatives. Another could be working with a luxury boat company. You go and do your boat experience, at the end you get dropped off and come and do a picnic. So it's just trying to think about what are things looking on the other side, and working with other partners or suppliers in the industry to work together and help each other.
Yeah, for sure. I think that cooperative message is going to be really key for the industry, because there's going to be a lack of capacity initially. Probably the demand will likely ramp up a little bit faster than that capacity, given the hibernation mode. One quick question, actually, when you were saying about, you need to be posting at least once a day, that can be a little bit intimidating for people who don't sort of do that naturally. Do you have a piece of software that you recommend or that you use for your business?
I don't. I do plan social media, so I generally spend half an hour to an hour once a week, and I will sit there and plan out what I'm going to post over the next 7 days. If you can do that over the next 2 weeks, brilliant. You could simply do that by having an Excel spreadsheet. This is the image I'm going to post, and this is the caption. Also start looking at within Instagram, within your business profile, you can look at your audience. So when is my audience most active? What regions are they in? So I can make sure I'm posting at the right time. So that's important, but no real other tools. Instagram, Facebook, they're not the biggest fan of using APIs and third-party apps interfering with Instagram. They like to kind of control that, and the algorithm can impact you on that. But yeah, planning is difficult. If you can't do every day, do once a week, consistently once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. You just slowly ramp it up.
That's
if you have
really
to, if you have to reuse content, get old content. It's better than posting nothing. And you want to add value to your customers. Tell them something interesting. Give them a reason to follow your page instead of buy me. Just if you're based in Sydney, for example, maybe a post about Sydney and educate them what's going on. The other day it was Green Day, so give some more information about special days and events. Remind people Mother's Day is coming up. Different things we can be doing.
It's funny that you say that about use old content. I think because we're so immersed in our content, we think like, of course, everyone has seen it. I just posted it. But most of the time it just flies right by. So, feel free to post it again the next week.
It's better to post that than nothing at all.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually use a combination of Trello for our planning and Hootsuite for our automation. So just in case that helps anybody. So there is a quick question here, though, in terms of being sold through to or being sold to. So I think people are afraid to post and market because they feel like it sets the wrong message, like that you're encouraging them to travel, and that can have a little bit of a blowback effect. So does anyone kind of want to speak to kind of taking that advice that Will gave, but sort of doing it in a conscious way?
Yeah, so I've been running a few adverts and paid advertisement, and actually got quite a lot of negative feedback on those. I don't think people fully understand and read the message. Anything about promoting touring activity, I found they instantly retaliate. The offer I was promoting was 15% off gift cards valid for 3 years. So I'm not asking you to book today, but it's you're trying to sell me something. You shouldn't be selling me something. So I ended up taking the advert down, and it's probably more providing more general awareness and consciousness. And I don't think it's probably the right time yet to start pumping out and promoting, depending on your product. Customers are getting itchy feet. I'm getting more messages than I had done in the last few months, or people inquiring. They're asking about future dates, but it is still a very sensitive topic. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, if I may add to that, look, I think there's definitely different ways of approaching, and I'm no marketing guru. Some of the conversation I'm having with our tourism bodies is around what are we doing to help the operators in the destinations during times like this, like making sure that our dearest tourism industry will be flourishing after this. And one of the things I keep saying is that how do we keep the travelers enticed during this time? We need to be able to sort of promote the region in a story in order for them to be able to start dreaming about the travel that will return inevitable. You know what I'm trying to say. And so that's I think what we can do now. And because if you look at the journey of the booking of the purchasing, is that we'll start to dream and look at certain things to be able to to plan. And I think that for the message certainly has to be around how do we get people to start thinking about these kind of things, start to even dream about it, as to what the next destination will be. And then they can go on to websites like GetYourGuide or some of the other OTAs to start planning for these kind of experiences. And this is why we're talking about the branding, positioning, such a strong thing we need to look at, because if you're now trying to paddle and get people to go buy now and save, I think that will definitely rub people the wrong way. But instead show them some very inspirational images, or maybe getting them to look at the reason for travel. And it's all about getting people to start thinking and dreaming about these experiences that we used to have. So I mean, 7 weeks been locked up at home is a very long time. So as you can imagine, everyone's now looking at it.
A lot of dreams.
Totally.
And Shireen, I think you wanted to touch on this topic as well.
Yeah. I think Kevin hit the nail on the head in terms of a story. But I mean, at this time, people they want to be engaged while they're at home. Some are, as Kevin said, dreaming. Some are not there yet. So my advice to operators is to talk about what you do best. whilst you can't do it to customers face to face at this time, do it knowing that people are hungry for this type of content. And by doing so, when they are ready to dream, you will be top of mind. So that's my first piece of advice. And then secondly, as well, when it comes to call to action, which is when you do try to move a customer to convert, as Will was talking about, this is where you can leverage the strength of industry here. This is where, by engaging in webinars like this, speaking constantly with your peers in the operator world, and with the bodies around you, the tourism bodies, and you know, with OTAs like us, we are doing a lot of work to monitor customer behavior and different metrics, so that we will know when people are ready to book, and then what types of things they are looking to book. And we'll share this information with you. We have a supplier blog and a hub of information which we're updating weekly, which is up to the minute advice on what we're seeing change in our industry that will help you to know when is the right time to apply that call to action to your messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the theme here, and we started, Shireen, you mentioned, you know, trying to provide certainty in a time of uncertainty. I mean, I think we have to all just get comfortable with the fact that we don't know, but that we still have to be present. We still have to show up. And, you know, you try something, like Will put something out there, it didn't work. He took it down, but he's still trying new things, and he's going to, you know, keep on top of the information that's coming. And when it is the right time, he's going to try again. So I think not expecting there to be answers, but being engaged and being ready for when it becomes clear. And I suppose that kind of leads into our next question around how will the way that we do business change after these restrictions are eased and during the recovery? And also try to speak in terms of the technology changes that you see your platforms likely to be making. Kevin, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the articles that I was reading on, I can't remember who it was, probably was FocusWire, based on a comment made by the CEO of Ctrip, because, you know, China opened up about 2 weeks ago, or maybe even longer than that. And what she was saying was that the normal mentality of travelers in China was, you know, you book on the day. But now that people are pivoting towards pre-booking, because that there's a limit capacity, so that, you know, the people who's been, you know, locked up at home with all the pent up, you know, anxiety of going to, you know, miss out on going to a place where they've been thinking about for the last couple of months, might get booked out. And so that, you know, that they're seeing a lot of demand for, you know, pre-booking, you know, booking into locations where people otherwise would not be, you know, would not be even thinking about. You know, and I mentioned about it before, is that the lean startup mentality, because that I know a lot of business out there who have, you know, been around for a very long time, and, you know, probably, you know, running in a certain way. And, you know, certainly I think that, you know, during this, you know, this unprecedented event, is that, you know, businesses have definitely taken a hit. And then, you know, that there is some, you know, thinking behind it, as in, how do you sort of now run a bit more, you know, leaner, a bit more quicker in terms of using the technologies, and also using, you know, reviewing the processes that you have as well. Another thing to think about is probably quality over quantity, you know, considering that the amount of, you know, I guess, the labor force that you may potentially have, as well as the depth over the breadth of the product that you wanted to offer. So, you know, go for that experience that people would want it to do, rather than going off and, you know, giving, you know, 10,000 products that probably, you know, only 20 of them ever get booked. But then again, you know, you just cannot ignore the social distancing, as well as, you know, trying to limit the spread, if you will, because that's not going to, you know, the COVID is not going to, you know, leave us for the next, you know, until unfortunately the vaccine's found. And so, you know, the amount of limiting the crowd, you know, how do you reduce the number during the sessions, and can you be able to sort of be assured that the business is able to sort of control the people and control the crowd that comes through? You know, you probably need to stop thinking about international travelers coming in anytime soon. Probably not this year, especially for us here in Australia. I wish that we can get the tourists back, because this is where most of, the transaction will happen. But, I think that, for us is that domestic is the way to go. But I think international market will be, some time, but we're absolutely having our finger crossed to be able to do, to see the international tourists come back with open arms. Domestic focus is absolutely important. Forget about air travel, because I think that people will still be a bit concerned about getting on a plane, somewhere where they have to go in a hotel. And I think the CEO of Destination New South Wales is saying that self-drive should absolutely be one of the critical thing that people focus on, because that if I was be able to go somewhere and spend 2 hours of driving, I think I'll be more comfortable doing, rather than having to stay somewhere overnight. Yeah, and a couple more points. So OTA is what I would say is that it's probably your friend, absolutely your friend, because these guys are doing a tremendous amount of job in getting that social media attention, getting that advertisement in front of your future customers, because right now they're all researching, and they're probably thinking about the brand and going out there and doing the work for you, in order for the operators to one day be able to get the bookings. And then lastly is that level up the communication with your customers. Don't just do the marketing and hope for the best. Do reach out. If you've got people reaching out to you on social, do comment, do respond, because that's, I think that the old way of thinking about doing a big massive marketing branding to get the mass effect, I think that will change slightly, because you're going to have concerned travelers who wanted to know, are you meeting these sort of criterias? Will you be able to to cater for my kids or for my grandma? And then of course, I think the virtual tourism or the virtual experience is here to stay. I mean, just if anything, just look at Google, right? So Google just released a blog earlier this week about they're enabling a street view capability for the local tour guide. And I think that's quite incredible, because that's, if you've got tour guide at the moment doing tours on the Google Street View, that could be potentially a future supplement to an experience that people cannot go, or probably as an additional product. And also with GetYourGuide and the virtual experiences, I think that's something else to watch out for as well. Yeah, so that's just a few points, I think.
Yeah, a lot of good thoughts there. I can only take one more. Will, Shireen, which one feels more like they want to talk on this one? Oh, Will's gone on mute first.
Yeah, I had a few bits. One of them was around what Kevin said about the pre-booking. I think that's a great idea, and just trying to think about what discount or incentive can you offer customers so they can book early. Early bird discount, for example. Things I'm doing and thinking about is, how can I be more agile? How can I reduce overheads? How can I change my yearly annual agreements into monthly agreements? Reservation systems, insurance, telephone contracts, things like this. And kind of already been covered, but offering different products for different markets. So what products can you change and adapt for the local domestic? And also just trying to get bookings from multiple sources. So trying to get those organic bookings through the website, but then also reaching out to different OTAs. I know OTAs take commission, and a lot of suppliers don't like that. But you can always turn these connections off, kind of work with these OTAs, use all the resources and skill they've had and got. You can always turn it off in a way. So just leverage what you can at the moment, and be a bit more agile going forward. So you can cut things easier if you need to, rather than being in big old contracts.
Totally. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's another thing people can do in this quiet time, renegotiate those. Well, I've got time for sort of one final question for each of you. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A, so we're unfortunately not going to be able to get to all of those, but hopefully we can do another one of these sessions in the future. So the question that I'd like to leave everyone with is, for those operators who already have a web presence, they have a social media following, they're on all those relevant OTAs, what is the one thing that they can do during this time to improve their technology? Shireen, let's start with you.
It's actually going to be quite difficult to put this into one. But I think focus on what you can control. And just to briefly expand on that, that means for your existing tours, you know, we expect to see a demand for greater flexibility from customers, for example. So really look at things like your cancellation policy, your cutoff time, that links up to API, the likes of Rezdy. Consider these where you're looking for efficiencies in your business, that this is the time to look at that. And more people will be looking to book online. This will affect your product, how it appears, how bookable is it, can they transact online, can they turn up with a mobile or digital ticket. So yeah, really kind of spread your eggs, but at the same time, focus on what you can control. Don't try to reach for the moon at this point. Just make small steps and be ready to pivot, because if anything, we know that things will only continue to change moving forward and post-COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, what's your one thing?
Oh, that's really hard for me. No, so I think this is a once in a lifetime thing that happened to all of us, and I think that we should not sit on our hand to sort of just worry about the future, but use it as an opportunity to improve our online experience and also booking flow, especially around the digital sales, because that's with what's going on, it's only going to accelerate. As the recovery comes, consumer will be definitely looking online to find a cheaper price, for the travel experience. As a matter of fact, this was talked about in the arrival report, which I encourage everyone to have a look. And also, is that don't forget to do the marketing, because this is super important. Just looking at some of the data between March and 15th of March to the 7th of April. On the global data is that the online browsing time has increased to about 91% comparison to the same period in 2019, and so I think that this is absolutely given. So online presence as well as optimizing your current system. If you don't have one, get one, because I think that's going to be the future when it comes to consumer spending and consumer behavior. Sorry.
Awesome. Yep. Actually, sorry, I apologize. I was thinking I had to finish at 7. We have until 7:30, so this will be the end of our formal questions, and then we will get to a bunch of these Q&A. But Will, if you want to tackle this last question, what is the one piece of technology you recommend people focus on?
I would say learn your technology stack. Find pain points. Your website isn't working. Google, research, YouTube, find what's causing you pains and issues and you don't like. There's plenty, unlimited free information out there. So learn the technology which is running your business on a day-to-day.
Yeah. Which I think also comes back to Shireen's point, just really focus in on, what matters to your business and make sure it's running really, really well. So I think, one of the challenges with technology is it's such a broad concept, right? And so what can you do? Well, I always like to tell people, start with the problem that you're trying to solve and then go find the technology that solves it, rather than starting with the tech and trying to cram it into your business. So hopefully turning that around will make it a little bit less scary, and you can just focus on what really matters to your business. So thank you guys all for going through all of the pre-made questions. So I'm actually going to start with one that is very technical from Fiona Sweetman. And this is a question for the platforms for GetYourGuide and Rezdy. are you guys expecting to plug in with more accounting programs? Xero in brackets and then better. So I'm not sure if you guys already integrate with Xero or not, but we'll start with Shireen and let you answer that question.
Well, I think specifically in terms of Xero, I need to take that one on notice. But broadly, you know, in terms of our payment options, we work with many different payment providers across the globe, and we're always working to expand this. We made many leaps and bounds quite recently to have a really strong footprint here in Australia to make it easier for our local operators to transact and, you know, receive payments from us. Mm-hmm. I'll take the specifics around Xero separately and get back to you, Fiona. But yeah, that's pretty much how we're working. It's every day we're advancing in this area.
Awesome. And Kevin, do you guys already plug in with accounting programs like Xero?
Yes. Nice, simple one word answer. But yes, yeah, no, absolutely. So we're integrated with Xero and also QuickBooks. And so, you know, for us is that all about expanding into, you know, new territories, again, to ensure that our customers are getting the most efficiency out of their day-to-day. And so, you know, Xero is absolutely one of the critical, you know, components of their live. And also we have a plug-in to a company called Zapier, which is a multi connectors out to, you know, all the other software companies as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're also integrated with Xero, and I think it's such a critical part. And when we think about, you know, how can you improve your technology, it's thinking about those kinds of integrations. And because if you can take a booking through Rezdy or through YouLive to Travel, and then it automatically creates an invoice in your accounting system, that means when the payment comes through, those can automatically reconcile, and, you know, that can save you so much time and money. And this is kind of getting back to, like, if what I just said makes no sense to you, then, you know, this is the time, as Will was saying, to figure out, oh, you mean I can connect my booking systems to my accounting systems? That's a thing that I can do. And the answer is yes, and it just takes a little bit of time to kind of make those systems talk to each other. And pretty much any platform that doesn't talk to other platforms now is going to. So you should start expecting that from your platforms for sure. Will, did you, oh, sorry, that was a platform question. Here's an interesting one, actually, and maybe, Will, you can kind of speak to this. This is from Bob Garner. Many small operators who have their own websites also have blogs linked to their website. Is that effective? In your experience, do such blogs work in terms of improving bookings or lifting the value of the website? So you can speak from your own perspective or from your industry perspective.
Yeah, so from my own perspective on that one, I don't have a blog. It's something I've been considering. The reason I don't at the moment is a time factor. I think having a blog is definitely a great idea. You're providing more content, you're becoming an author, you're kind of leading the way in your thoughts and opinions. Having blogs as well will also help your SEO ranking. So when people start searching Google results, if what they've typed come up in your blog or came up in your blog, you'll appear higher up in Google search results. So I would say, yeah, definitely do blogs if you've got the time. One thing I'm looking at where I don't have the time is looking at potentially offshoring that or getting someone to help me out with that. So kind of stick to what you're good at and get others to help you at what you're not so good at. But yeah, blogs are a yes.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think it's a really great point, Will. This is where OTAs can help, so that, you know, many of our owner operators in particular are busy operating their business or working on the operations of their business, and we OTAs and GetYourGuide are proficient in marketing you and finding you customers and giving you customers in a very efficient way. So this is where an opportunity, if you are straddling both and finding yourself time poor, resource poor, to really consider, okay, a booking system will help me be more efficient here. Marketing through an OTA, they've got a blog, they can push me through their blog. Have a look at all these options for you so that you can work even more efficiently after COVID.
Yeah, that's a really good point in terms of like thinking about, oh, you know, I don't want to pay commission, but really in a sense, you're just being able to translate instead of fixed marketing costs, which maybe, you know, you don't know how to optimize your SEO. Maybe you don't, you know, optimizing ads is an expensive and challenging business. So yeah, if you're honest with yourself about that, you know, to Will's point, you know, do what you're good at and hire other people to do the things that you're not good at.
Outsource.
Yes.
That's what we're here to do.
So it's actually a question here for me. How will group travel need to change now that social distancing is the new norm? I think from our perspective, actually, our kind of group travel tends to be people who kind of already know each other, or at least are sort of in a similar community. And it tends to be small group travel. So our perspective overall is that group travel is going to shift towards smaller niche group travel, more so than the big buses. And we think that the COVID crisis is accelerating that trend. But in terms of the social distancing aspect of that, I think, yeah, look, you're not going to be able to take a group somewhere until the restrictions are lifted such that a group of people can sit on a bus together. So I think it's just about waiting until that time comes. Either that or focusing on family groups, like I think Kevin's example was earlier. So targeting people who can be co-located together under the current restrictions. So anyone else want to tackle the group travel question? No? All right. Oh.
Only to add on what I said earlier, I think group travel will start off with private tours. So just because of some of the regulations that are in personal space. So yeah, start with private tours, and then I think that the size of group tours will slowly start to increase, but get ready for private tours first.
Yeah, that's a good point. So a group of 2 to begin. So here's a good question that I think we touched on a little bit earlier, but probably deserves a little bit more time. How do you see the usage of cash changing, and how can we support communities that are reliant on using it? So for example, local travel or shopping.
What was the question? Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. How do you see the usage of cash changing, and how can we support communities that are reliant on using it for local travel or shopping? So I know whenever I travel, I always take cash with me because you just never know. Even though in Australia, I'm tapping everywhere and I get really used to that. If I get on a plane, I make sure I have cash. So do you think that's going to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a society where we used to have, I remember we used to have 10-cent coin or even 1-cent coin to no longer having that to even 5-cent coin. I can't tell you the last time I have cash in my wallet, to be honest. I've always been a tap on guy and have my watch ready to go, and if the shop doesn't have a POS machine that doesn't let my Apple do the tapping, I'll very likely go to the next door. But joking aside, I mean, if you look at, I'm going to take, China as an example, is that, we're looking at some of the stuff that they're doing, such as the Alipay. And one of the things when I was in China, probably early 2019, was that, you'll be very hard pressed to go around with finding people carrying a lot of cash, or even a credit card for that sake, because everyone is using either WePay or WeChat Pay or Alipay as a form of payment. And this is very alien to me because, going into China, I carry a lot of cash around, but people are actually using mobile phones with their QR code of scanning things. And I think, as through, the last couple of weeks, with a contactless payment with a credit card, that's only going to make sure that all of us is going to be, carrying less cash, but more around that, that plastic in our pocket, and there are some very creative companies out there, like one of the bank I can't remember, we've introduced a ring, that you can wear. One of our CTOs is actually has one, and also with your mobile, your watches, that now can do transaction through that as well. So I do think that if you're currently looking at having a cashless transaction, that's very much going to be the future. But at the same time, look at, what will be the sort of the next phase to sort of preempt that. But I think that's still, a distance to come. And, I'm thinking about, here in Australia, do we need to start looking at introducing Alipay or, WeChat Pay? But, we're probably not going to see much tourists coming in. So I don't think there's an urgency for it. But for the long run, that could be potentially the future. But then again, if you booked it online, that's probably not something you'll need to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. Shireen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important question. Our view is certainly we see that moving forward, more people will be using like their card, well, not using cash, but using other means to book online, so contactless payment essentially. My observation of this is this was happening anyway, but like you mentioned in terms of like the group touring, moving from bigger groups to smaller groups, like COVID is essentially just accelerating some of these changes in habits. Just this week, I read that one of the banks has dispensed debit cards for free to people that don't already have a card so that they can continue to transact in the current environment at home. And when they go out, because a lot of, for example, grocery stores are not accepting cash as well. And so my observation is it's accelerating this change. It will eventually, I guess, be a global thing. And so what you can do now is if you see that happening and you have an opportunity to, I suppose, be a part of that wave and ready yourself for that customer, like action that now, take steps in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I'm not sure if that question was about sort of like within your supply chain in terms of, so you may want to help some of your suppliers to kind of come online if they haven't done that already and they don't know how to access that. So this is an opportunity to sort of pay it forward and assist them in getting into online payments, whether that's for the Chinese market or for whatever market you're targeting there. So yeah, I think it's absolutely been a trend that's already well progressed, and this is really just going to push the people who have been resistant. And I think previously it was like the local people, local cafes would be like, yeah, we love cash, and now they're like, please no cash. So definitely accelerating that. So let's turn ourselves to a topic that I think is quite interesting in a long-term sense, is the sustainability conversation. So Justin Steele is asking, COVID-19 has forced many businesses to think about sustainability and a bigger crisis looming ahead, climate change. How can small tourism businesses use travel technology to become more sustainable? For example, does Rezdy allow customers to carbon offset their bookings? So Kevin, we'll start with you since you were called out in that question.
No, good question. I mean, being environment friendly is always one of the critical things that we'll look at. Even our building that we are in is very green because it's all solar panel fit out. So, but to be more serious around the question, I don't have an answer for that because that's probably something we'll need to take it offline for us to be able to do some research around it. But I think that question comes from Justin, so I'll take it off and respond back to him later on.
Sounds good. Shireen, do you want to speak to GetYourGuide's sort of position on sustainability?
Yeah, I think even before this time, sustainability was a very big topic. It was brought up and discussed at length at almost every conference I went to last year, and as well, obviously, outside of our industry, it's on top of everyone's minds. In tours and activities, it is very complex. It's a different question of introducing, for example, carbon offsets when you purchase an air ticket because of the different types of tours and activities that we have, and then what sustainability means for all those different types of tours and activities. And as well, it varies by market. So the approach we are taking is we're being informed by our customers. we are, our customers as our North Star, and we listen to them. So at this point in time, we are working on how to, I guess, well, what does sustainability look like in tours and activities, and then sharing insights from our customers with operator partners, so that if and when they want to improve their tours in that space, they can. So this is pretty much where we're at, and we continue. This is basically something that we've been working on already, and we continue to work on through this time.
Yeah, great. And Will, what are your thoughts in terms of, as an operator, the challenges of sort of being sustainable, and what does that mean for you in particular?
Yeah, I think we can look at what we're doing rather than being reliant on technology to resolve these things. Is what we can do. For example, Graze and Gaze, for every booking we get, we donate to OzHarvest. So instead of being relying on a reservation system to offer carbon offset, can you include that as a company? What kind of eco message can you give out? What can you give back to the community? Rather than being relying on GetYourGuide or Rezdy or others to kind of do that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, and that's absolutely something that you can offer, not necessarily as part of the booking, at that time, but maybe even after the fact, if you do a follow-up, you can kind of encourage people, if you want to promote either a community organization or an offsetting program or something like that. I know a lot of our clients actually work with NGOs in the countries that they go to. So that's their way of being sustainable, is that they partner with not-for-profits in the destinations that they're going to. So that's kind of the way that they ensure a community focus for their products. I think sometimes carbon offsetting can, some people call it greenwashing. I think it's a really complicated topic. Mm-hmm. And so I think every business needs to decide whether or not it makes sense to even consider offering that. There was a company actually, I think in Australia, called Blue Halo, that is offering an API to connect that into your booking. So if you're at that level of your tech stack and you're ready to integrate into an API for carbon offsetting, there are providers out there that do that, if that's right for your business. All right. So some good questions here, but I think often I don't know that we'll necessarily know the answers to them because our magic balls are currently a little bit broken. So I might, boy, the list continues. So actually, this is a good one from Aaron Hayes. Again, thinking of the future when travel opens up, what precautions would you recommend to safeguard the reputation of providers of travel? So I think that's in terms of the expectations that get set, and maybe travel providers are feeling a little bit burned from all of the cancellations and complaints. So what are your thoughts in terms of how a travel company can safeguard their reputation? Shireen, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I speak on behalf of all of our existing operators, who I can safely say have done an incredible job at this tough time. And together, in terms of a customer-facing reputation, we have a very strong one, I think, at this time. And certainly, this is what we've invested in, so that customers do, when they can travel again, they do book with us and our operators. In terms of like what you can do on the ground, I think listen and learn as much as you can, and make informed decisions about how you want to represent your business to the customer when they turn up. So, thinking ahead of, okay, well, likely at this point in time, people want to be distanced. As we discussed earlier, they'll want maybe easy access to be able to wash their hands or hand sanitizer, and they'll want security when they book. So offering a very flexible cancellation policy, not so that people can cancel, but actually so you can get more bookings. So kind of really taking a step back and thinking about if I were a customer, like what would I look for, you know, before I make a booking, before I kind of venture outside my house again and make another booking, hopefully soon in a foreign land. But so these are the sorts of things, and be informed by this, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, things are changing so often, so be guided by our industry bodies who are very strong and are helping to keep us informed, but be ready to change as well. So as long as you stay nimble and make informed decisions, I think that the trust will be there when customers are ready to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. And that cancellation policy there, I guess it sort of makes you think that maybe it needs to be a little bit more prominent. I think sometimes that's often a hidden piece. So maybe that's something, and I don't know, Kevin, if you can speak to that in terms of technology to kind of help you make it clear what your cancellation policies are.
Yeah, I mean, the cancellation policy has definitely come up quite a few times, obviously, as the amount of, I guess, you know, drop off in terms of people couldn't run their tours or just don't feel safe to travel. And so, you know, we have different ways of coping with, you know, the amount of cancellation that could come in. You know, whether that they're working with a reseller in order for them to be able to manage that cancellation through the OTAs or through their own website. You know, we catered our system specifically to the need of that operator. You know, whether they wanted to set it in a very lenient way or whether they wanted to now, you know, to turn that into a credit for future travel. You know, this is something that we are doing, you know, at the very forefront of it to make sure that the consumer in the end has the confidence to know that if I'm going to, you know, fork out, you know, quite a few hundreds of dollars for an experience, you know, I want to make sure I can do it in the first place. But the most important thing is that, you know, when time does turn good, I will be able to sort of come back again with the flexibility, you know, that I can do it. And I think that, you know, as a res system, this is one of the things that we sort of pride ourselves on, is that to have that flexibility of not letting them, also not only letting them to have the ability to sort of set the terms and conditions whenever that they take a direct booking, but they're also giving them the choice of working with different resellers who may be giving them different avenues or different clientele in some ways for them to be able to sort of, you know, run their business in a more efficient way, you know, in this new world that we're about to go into. So I think that, you know, from a cancellation perspective, you know, that has been a very repeated topic for the last couple of weeks. And I think that will definitely be one of the things that, you know, from a consumer booking perspective, you know, that will be definitely, you know, if not the safety distancing thing, will be at, you know, the forefront of, you know, in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And Will, your thoughts?
I think it's been covered, but three things I would focus on is improving your customer experience and service. Around that, being a bit more patient with your customers, expect these cancellations, relaxing your refund policies, and also with the gift cards. A lot of suppliers now are offering 3-year gift cards. Some suppliers aren't sure if they'll still be operating in 3 years or where they will be, but it's still better to get those bookings in and have to give refunds than get no bookings at all. So yeah, just be a bit more patient, and how can we improve customer service?
Well, that kind of leads me into the next question here, which is how should operators avoid falling into the discount trap to ensure that they don't give too much away during their recovery? That's from Ricky. Shireen, do you want to? Oh, sorry, Will, if you have a response.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's a very good point to consider, and kind of what I mentioned earlier is offer discounts, offer incentives. You can always turn them off. It depends on what product, what offer, whether it's luxury or you're kind of targeting international customers. Give these things a go, try them out. You don't know unless you don't try.
Absolutely.
I'm always, you know, very cautious about being, you know, dropping your price to sort of attract the audience, because that's just a short-term gain. If you feel that the business can can do with such a quick win, because that if you always compete on price, it's a slippery slope to the bottom. And what I always say is that think about the offering and think about the depth of the product rather than the breadth of the product, as I mentioned before. Because that's post-COVID, everyone's taken a hit. Everyone's going to have to lean up, and also we just got to think about how the operation needs to be more towards customers. And I think that some of the people that I've been talking to is that you can't just sort of go out there and say, we have a very hygiene location, we have a very good social distancing. How do you start from the beginning to even make people feel the trust and the confidence that you have, done all of that and beyond? Because I can tell you, if somebody tell me, if I go into a fast food store and they go, yeah, we'll practice social distancing, but how do I know the delivery man who delivered the food to you is doing the same thing? And I think that, all of that comes very much, fundamentally from the human nature. And this is why I'm, very big on getting the operators to make sure that they don't go quiet during this period, to make sure that they build that relationship with with their consumers, whether it be the reseller or the operator. Don't disappear, because that, your business may not be getting much traffic or not getting, looked at. And I think this is what you need to reach out and start getting the engagement. One of the guys that uses Rezdy in Auckland, their zoo, there's only one, they're very good at, social media, making sure that they're engaging, even just posting pictures of themselves, having team meetings, as well as having themselves looking at, different things and sharing their zoos. I think that's incredible, because that's, as soon as the market comes back, I wanted to go and know more about that person rather than about the zoo. But to know about that person, you got to go to the zoo. But I think that, this is one of the things I always say, don't disappear. Make sure you stay up in front of people as more as you probably need to do now than ever.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, Shireen, you get the last word.
Yeah, so discounting, another great question, very relevant for many people. So the way we see discounting is it is only one tool amongst many tools that you have to promote. And certainly it's been our experience with operators that it's not necessarily the cheapest tour that gets the most bookings. So our perspective is more so focus on delivering your incredible experiences and delivering to the customer what you say you will, and then you will get the return. And what I mean by that is your customer will have an incredible time, leave a review, a 5-star review for you, and then it has a compound effect where customers will look rather to reviews versus price in order to decide what to book. So that's probably the main takeaway. And again, after COVID, I mean, if anything, we've been talking about, new measures, whether they're permanent or temporary measures that we need to consider applying to our tours and activities after this time. But, when we're talking about private tours or having to cap the number of people that go on your tour or into your attraction, it is possible that people will actually want to pay more for the tour and activity that that they want to do, because again, they have new expectations in this post-COVID world, and if you can deliver that, then they're ready to pay for that once-in-a-lifetime experience, and it doesn't mean it needs to be the cheapest by any means.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. And, I think some really great questions here today. Thank you guys so much for coming on tonight and sharing your insight. And, I think the takeaways that I heard loud and clear is stay present as much as you can with the resources that you have. Now's not the time to necessarily, get bookings, but now's the time to prepare for when that is going to come. Probably working on some new products. Maybe those are virtual, kind of depends on your business. And it's definitely time to dust off your your sort of learning hat and figuring out, what piece of technology can you learn so that you can do it yourself and save yourself some money. But then when you hit that wall and you're thinking, oh, I really don't know how to do this, that's when you work with somebody who does. And obviously, companies like Rezdy and GetYourGuide have a lot of support they can offer in their spaces. Lots of platforms out there that meet specific needs. So take this time to shop around and find the one that really works right for you. And, stay positive. We will travel again someday. And basically, travelers want operators to figure this out. They do want to get back out there. They're going to be scared, some of them are going to be overeager. So you just got to roll with it, be agile, be optimistic, and yeah, stay safe. So thank you guys. And I look forward to hopefully having another session in the future. Jessie, I think I'll hand it back to you.
Cool, thank you everyone. Like Jen mentioned, special thanks to all the speakers, especially Rezdy for helping us put this together. Yeah, we'll be sending out a recording of this session as well as a feedback form. So thanks everyone and have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having us
everyone.
for an
Thanks for
hour.
participating.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
I'm my fellow panelist.